Today, we'll be discussing with Ameya about bringing automation for better implementation of PMFBY. Let's begin. Hi Ameya.
Hi, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this podcast.
So Ameya, my first question is, how is PMFBY being currently implemented in India? Basically, why do you think automation is necessary during the modern times? And if you can also link it to PMFBY.
Sure. So, as you know, PMFBY is currently the world's largest going crop insurance scheme. So, here, from our point of view, if you look at it, there are hundreds of thousands of farmers who are registering for the insurance. There are hundreds of crop cutting experiments which are being conducted across the country for the yield estimation. There are states in India who are doing the crop mapping, and it is a massive process involving multiple stakeholders. My point being that we are generating a big warehouse of data which is right now decentralized. The data is present in different places. So the whole idea is to have all of the geodata at a central location rather than just the data itself. If I try to give an example, I can give a current example that the food delivery apps that we use so popularly nowadays. Earlier, before they weren't there, we just had a list of restaurants. Now you just add a latitude longitude tag to the list of restaurants or the location factor, and then it becomes a biggest running food delivery business which has now revolutionized the entire restaurant industry as well. So to put it into context of the PMFBY, when you have the location information attached to any kind of information or data, you get a spatial angle, you get new insights into it. So this brings me to the later part of the question, that why do we deploy automation? The reason being that automation brings transparency, automation brings more efficiency, leaves lesser room for human error. And now in the global context, or in the global remote sensing context, you've got more and more satellites being launched every day. In today's date, I can have a clear satellite image of any place, any location every 5 days. Then you have much better cloud processing options, all of which were not present, say, about 3 to 5 years ago. So given all these resources that are made available, many of them open source, it is necessary that we create some kind of automation in order to ensure the smooth implementation of PMFBY.
Okay, so you said it's necessary to create automation for PMFBY. So if we go category specific, then can you tell like PMFBY is currently implementing yield estimation through technology. It's called YesTech. So it's basically estimating yield at the ground level. So currently nearly 10 states have adopted YesTech, and we have TIPS and MITS as partner organizations also to carry out YesTech in these states. So how does automation helps in YesTech?
Certainly. So as the YesTech, as the name says, the yield estimation using technology. It consists of several components. Let's go through them temporally. So the first step of YesTech will be the smart sampling points generation, where the crop cutting experiments will be done. Now these smart sampling points are generated from the ministry and sent to the respective states, where they just have to follow the location and then do the crop cutting experiment. Here the smart sampling is based on 4 different parameters such as biomass, you have leaf moisture content, you have radar backscatter. Now these are categorized into 4 categories so that we ensure we are conducting experiments in all types of crops and not just high performing or low performing crops. So here I can give an example of an automation that we are bringing in, is that we have made a Python code to automatically generate these parameters and also put in the random points in each of these 4 types of categories of crops. Now here, these will go to the states. Another problem that used to arise earlier is that some of the points that have been generated could be erroneous. It could be a crop which is misclassified, or it could have been harvested between the date of point generation and the date of actual experiment. So here we have brought in another automation by which after generation of these points, it goes through an automated filtering or a quality control process, so to say. Just to give an example, this year in Kharif in Odisha, we managed to delete such points which are already harvested. So let's assume that if the points are generated today and the experiment is to be done 15 days later, we managed to detect the fields which have already been harvested, so that it saves a lot of time and resources for the states. Another aspect of ESTEC is building a crop signature library, which is very vital. This will help in detecting more and more crops. This will help in including more and more crops in the PMFBY. And then again comes back to the point of visualization of all states' data. The data that, like you mentioned, the Mitra and the TIPS, the data that they are producing, it should be visualized in a central location for better monitoring. So we are working towards building a geo portal for that. As well as this, there are more crops which are to be included in PMFBY. So there are some pilot studies which are to be conducted. So for the assessment of these pilot studies, we have created more Python scripts that each of the districts, each of the components of those experiments should be assessed quickly and in the same manner that each experiment is being assessed. So these are some of the ventures in ESTEC automation that we are doing.
That's very interesting. Actually, with YesTech, PMFBY also had launched WINDS. So, WINDS is basically Weather Information Network Data Systems, which is basically a stronger network of automatic weather stations and automatic rain gauges. Now, how do you use automation for a technology like WINDS?
So, with something like WINDS, which is continuously collecting weather data from different types of stations, our main aim is to relate the WINDS data along with other geo data. So like I said, again, the visualization with a spatial context. So now if you give me any farm in the country, then with a GIS processing, I can tell exactly which insurance unit it belongs to.
Okay.
It helps sort of clear that gray area and put hard and fast boundaries on any kind of information.
So you can actually do what? So you can figure out which IU belongs to.
So for example, let's consider any farm in the country and that person has suffered a loss due to excessive rainfall. So first question arises that which automatic weather station's data is to be considered for this farm to be considered as affected by rainfall. So we are trying to make this very hard and fast. So when you have a geographical boundary set, that is the beauty of GIS, so to say, that you have the geographical boundary, you have the point location of the weather station. All you have to simply do is set up a geofencing alert that each farm, whether it falls within that boundary or not, and there you have the relation between each farm and its respective weather station. Then there are we are also exploring some satellite-based options for two things. Now, for example, for things like heat wave, for things like excessive rainfall, there are other satellite data sources which could be used to not only check the quality of the already existing winds network, but also there are certain data gaps which are right now existing, but more and more stations will be installed. But till then, we have these options. We are exploring these options to fill the data gaps in the weather data.
So will it be helpful in cases such as when farmers complain that there was hailstorm or rainfall in their field but not very close to the neighbor's field? So will it be helpful there as well?
Definitely. Up to a certain scale, we can definitely say, like for example, one source of satellite-based weather data is 5 by 5 kilometer grid. So you have new data at every 5 kilometers. So roughly you can say at every village, maybe not at a single field level, but still that becomes very vital information, because maybe in those two villages there is no automatic weather station. Then this information becomes very vital because it is an alternative source for where there was a massive data gap.
Okay, and as we all know that PMFBY is also working towards bringing a technology called cropping, wherein damage to a crop would be effectively captured through pictures and then assessed that what is the extent of the damage. So what is the plan for using automation here?
Yes. So cropping, I would say that it is a very ambitious and a wonderful project, because considering the heterogeneity that is present in Indian agriculture, this would really strengthen the whole mechanism of verification of loss. This would benefit the farmers, the ministry, basically this will benefit all the stakeholders involved. So here the whole idea is that since we have hundreds and thousands of farmers being enrolled, there we do not have the resources to inspect each and every photograph sent by them. So here we'll be using computer vision technology or image recognition, which you can simply compare to facial recognition or some other computer vision technologies being used.
Okay.
So the same thing, let's assume a farmer is growing wheat and the wheat is suffering from some kind of disease. The farmer simply has to upload a photo, and here the computer vision will automatically detect that it is wheat. So here is step one, where you also have the latitude, longitude and a ground truth that this field is wheat. So that is the first vital information. And the second part is that the algorithm will also detect the disease. So this will help reduce the ambiguity here, that whether someone's field was affected or not. And we can go on a much finer scale using this, using cropping. Another thing is that nowadays crowdsourcing has become a very important way of data collection in most scientific fields. So you can consider cropping as a way of crowdsourcing too, in which there are hundreds of farmers who are sending in their photos. So this becomes information with a geotag, which can be used in different ways for farmer welfare. It can be used for planning, it can be, and of course for PMFBY implementation.
That's very elaborative and wonderful, Ameya. If you can also throw some light on how does automation help in day-to-day implementation of cropping of PMFBY, the Crop Insurance Scheme of India, and especially what is in it for the stakeholders, primarily the state governments.
To go through the overall implementation, the general day-to-day implementation, let's go through the steps of how a single insurance policy will work here. That a farmer who is growing some crop, he or she registers on the NCIP portal. The crop cutting experiments are conducted in their block, insurance unit or district. Then let's say an adversity happens or some yield loss happens, then a survey is done, the claims are paid. So these are all detached process. Like I mentioned in the beginning, this process, we are trying to bring a more centralized monitoring approach to all these processes. I'll explain it with a bit of a parallel example, that when you have all kinds of geodata coming from different sources at the same location, how vital I can go back in history to give an example, that in 1854 in London, when there was a cholera outbreak, then one doctor decided to put these on a map. And when he saw the map, and he also saw some particular water tanks along with the hotspot of these outbreak clusters of people, then is where humanity even found out that cholera spreads through water. So here my point is, when you visualize different kinds of, so put it into context of PMFBY, you have weather, you have satellite based crop health, and you have all the legal boundaries, you have the cadastral boundaries. Now this helps you visualize many things. Has this particular taluka, how much has been affected? Mm-hmm. Is the yield gone down for this? Have they been paid the claims as the yield has gone down? So these kind of verifications can be done. Again, each and every insurance policy, since we have the geodata, now it will be tied to an IU boundary, it will be tied to a cadastral boundary, with which you can verify the name of the person, you can verify the area insured, you can verify the crop insured. This can help prevent fraud in the future, or cases where someone else is taking out the insurance policies in other farmer's name and the farmer has no idea what is happening.
Yes.
So here the automation is very vital, with which you can simply get a list of all these mismatches, and then the appropriate action can be taken. Along with this, the loss verification can be done with satellites instead of only ground-based survey. So this is another important factor. So basically multiple data. So let me put it in a case specific manner, that let's say that there is somewhere there is farmers are unhappy in some part of the country, in some taluka. Then here now you don't need to, once all this automation, all the geodata is in one place, you don't need to pull out documents from different sources anymore.
Yeah.
All you have to do is simply go to the web portal, click on it. There you find, were they affected by heavy rainfall? What was their crop condition before this date? All the information can be found in a single place, which will hopefully help make the implementation of PMFBY more smooth.
Okay, that was quite elaborative again, Amya. So, we were hearing Ameya, Remote Sensing Associate at CPMU UNDP. Thank you to everybody who joined this podcast. We'll be back with another episode at ExpertSays, PMFBY's own podcast with stakeholders. See you soon.